Hello, I'm Haley Perot, and this is Northwest Newsweek. Some tragic news from the Fort Frances area this week. Officials with New Gold are reporting a workplace fatality at its Rainy River mine. In a media release, New Gold expressed its deepest regrets as the company confirmed an industrial accident took the life of one of their employees early Wednesday morning. The worker was operating a piece of equipment in the open pit when he was struck by material and suffered fatal injuries. An investigation is underway to assess the cause of the accident, and 2 inspectors from the Ministry of Labor are also involved. Operations at the mine have been voluntarily suspended for the time being. The victim was Jeff Woolsey from Barwick. A GoFundMe in support of his family had already raised nearly $30,000 by Friday morning. Woolsey leaves behind a fiancé, 3 children, and 3 stepchildren. Canada and Ontario owe nearly 150 years of back pay to the First Nations in the Robinson Treaty areas. The Supreme Court of Canada says the Crown dishonorably breached the treaties for failing to increase annuity payments. Lee Noonan has been following the story.
The Supreme Court was scathing in its decision on an appeal to the Robinson Treaty's annuities case, calling the Crown's breach of its treaty obligations egregious and dishonorable, and saying, quote, "For almost a century and a half, the Anishinaabe have been left with an empty shell of a treaty promise."
Today, the Supreme Court of Canada has made sure and expressly stated that the governments are not above the law.
In what the court calls a mockery of the Crown's treaty promise, annuity payments to the Robinson Superior and Robinson Huron First Nations haven't increased since 1875, when they were set to $4 per person per year. The country's highest court has now upheld previous decisions, affirming the Crown should have regularly increased payments and now owes the First Nations.
I mean, this is, this is really positive. This is really something to be celebrated.
Fort William First Nation Chief Michelle Solomon says the decision reinforces the Crown's obligation to the First Nations and the need to hold the Crown accountable.
You're hopeful that things are going to come back in what you believe to be the right decision, the right way, the right thing to do. We all know that it doesn't always happen that way, so I'm really grateful.
The ruling lays responsibility on the Crown to augment treaty payments liberally and justly, quote, sharing the wealth of the land.
They do not have unfettered discretion to decide if there should be an annuity increase, when it should be. That matter ultimately is for the courts to decide if the governments do not act honorably.
The Huron Area First Nations already negotiated a $10 billion settlement, but the Superior First Nations took the issue to court, arguing they're owed dramatically more, as much as $126 billion. This new ruling puts a hold on that process and sends the parties back to the negotiating table with a narrow 6-month timeline to come to a settlement. Solomon won't speculate on the possible amount of a settlement or payment increase, but does say it could make a big difference in her community.
It can mean, new homes. It can mean, new opportunities. It can change the course of a person's life.
After waiting nearly a century and a half, courts also say payments should not be delayed if a settlement isn't reached or if the issue goes to judicial review. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
A national group which funds Indigenous housing projects has announced its list of approved projects for the Northwest, valued at nearly $29 million. The money for the 3 major developments in Canora and Thunder Bay comes from a fund included in the 2022 federal budget. Justin Hardy reports.
This news conference was held for what was described as a historic funding announcement. Federal Minister of Indigenous Services, Patty Haidu, provided details of the projects involved.
The Reverend Tommy Beardy Memorial Family Treatment Center, who will receive $10 million for constructing 134 smart homes here in Thunder Bay. In Canora, 2 of the projects that have received funding are the 7 Generations Education Institute, $10 million for the construction of 68 student, family, and transitional housing units with supportive services on site. Another one in Canora, KK Kozibi Development Corporation $8.7 million to purchase 20 acres of land and build 24-unit affordable housing building.
The funding for these projects was included in the 2022 federal budget, but it took until now to solidify which projects would get the green light from the funding agency, National Indigenous Collaborative Housing Incorporated. Nietzsche CEO John Gordon says it was a very complex process involving a project selection advisory council made up of housing providers from across the country.
Those individuals come up with criteria, and that criteria was need, community support, evidence that they could be successful in delivering the project, and they rated each proposal of 447. This was a volunteer group of individuals. They rated those with numbers, and so from 0 to 100. The green-lighted projects, which I believe was everything above 70.
Haidu says the most exciting part of this funding is the transition of power by having an Indigenous-led entity be the one distributing the funding instead of the government.
You know, this is, as I mentioned in my remarks, a very colonial government with a very colonial system. And over the last 9 years, we've been really working to figure out how we restore power and control to Indigenous peoples where it rightfully belongs in matters that are deeply connected to family, to home, to nation, to culture, to identity.
2 other projects in Timmins and North Bay have already been approved by Nietzsche. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
A First Nation near Canora celebrated the groundbreaking of a new community subdivision. The new space in Wabsumung Independent Nations establishes the building of 63 new homes and associated roads. Indigenous Services Canada is investing over $15 million in funding for the project as part of a government-wide strategy aimed at addressing housing needs for First Nations. The Anishinaabe-Aski Police Service has quietly relocated its headquarters in Thunder Bay. NAPS officials won't comment on the move, but the sign on the new building is hard to miss. NAPS is the largest First Nations police service in Canada, and they're now operating out of an office complex on the corner of Balmoral and William Streets. The police headquarters was previously based in an office building on Court Street South for the past 15 years, which is now vacant. The move began a few months ago, and the new headquarters won't be open to the public until the fall. There was no formal announcement about the change, and NAPS officials have declined requests for interviews. Police in the Ignace and Dryden area are asking locals to refrain from posting photos of highway crashes online. The people behind 2 social media groups dedicated to sharing those photos say they have good reason for what they do, and they plan to keep on posting. Lee Noonan has that story.
In a recent post to the Northwest Region OPP Facebook page, Ignace and Dryden Police asked that the public not share photos or information from crash scenes online to avoid the possibility families could learn of the death of a loved one through social media. Dryden OPP Sergeant Brittany Bembenek says she's not personally aware of any instances where that's been an issue, but she does stand by the request.
I think that's important because as human beings, we need to remember that this is a police investigation that's taking place, as well as someone is driving by the collision scene, they're not aware of what happened. Pictures that they're posting on social media could have lasting effects, and of course cause greater concern for families that may have family members traveling on the road.
Northwest OPP say they recorded 1,229 motor vehicle collisions between January and June 2024. Those resulted in 9 fatalities. Raising awareness of the dangers on the road is the point of posting images and information about crashes for the people behind Facebook pages like Skilled Truckers Canada and Highway 1117 Kills People. Quote, "That's why we created this group, put pressure on the governments so they take the problem of all these accidents seriously and draw the attention of the media." The admin teams of both groups say they have lost family members themselves and avoid posting graphic images and identifying details. "We make every attempt possible to eliminate identifiers of who they may be. We are not without heart, but we do recognize it's sweeping everything under a rug that's allowing for more death and carnage on our highways." Meanwhile, Bembenek says she's concerned about the impact that citizens recording crash scenes and posting images might have on policing.
We have a police investigation going on at this time. We need the information that we are having on scene to not be shared in regards to that police investigation.
Recording on duty police officers is a protected right in Canada. According to a Canadian Civil Liberties Association Know Your Rights document, several court and disciplinary decisions have affirmed that police officers do not have the power to simply order a person to stop filming them, with one ruling affirming that police interference with an individual who's filming and or photographing police is a, quote, significant abuse of authority. More information on the right to film and photograph police is available on the Canadian Civil Liberties Association website. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
It's time now for a short break. When we come back, Canora MP Eric Melillo announces his plans for the next federal election.
Hopeful to be able to earn the support of residents again, and like I said, serve hopefully on the government side of the aisle.
The next scheduled general election is still more than a year away, but the federal Conservatives are already getting ready for the recently expanded Canora-Kiiwetinoong riding. Current MP Eric Melillo has announced he'll be running for a third time whenever the next federal vote is held. Justin Hardy has more.
Canora MP Eric Melillo has officially announced he will be running again for the Conservatives. Melillo was first elected as a member of parliament in October of 2019. At age 21, he became one of the youngest MPs ever elected to the House of Commons. He was re-elected by a comfortable margin in the 2021 federal vote. Melillo says it's been an honor to serve the riding over the past 5 years, and with Pierre Poilievre as leader now, he's excited about the party's chances of victory this time.
I'm happy with the work I've done, proud of the advocacy I've done standing up for Northwestern Ontario, and I'm just hopeful to be able to earn the support of residents again, and like I said, serve hopefully on the government side of the aisle after this next election. So a lot of work is going to lead up to that. Of course, we're still a year and a half or so away from that election, but we want to get a start early.
The riding boundaries in many parts of Canada were recently redrawn. In regions like the Northwest, the ridings are massive compared to their major urban counterparts. The Canora riding was redrawn in 2022 and will become Canora-Kiiwetinoong for the next election. Melillo says the new look riding does come with some challenges.
Been back for just a few weeks this summer, but already trying to put as many miles on as possible so that I can get around that district. And the riding's actually going to be slightly smaller in the next election. We'll be losing four for First Nations in the Northeast to Superior North. But it's still a very large geography to cover and a diversity of issues. But I think that's what makes it such an honor to serve a riding like ours.
Melillo is the first in his riding to announce his candidacy, and he doesn't know just yet who he will be running against. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
An inquest is set to begin in Thunder Bay on Monday regarding the death of a young woman in Kingfisher Lake First Nation in 2017. 31-year-old Ruthan Quish, a diabetic patient, died from health complications due to a lack of insulin. She had attended the nursing stations in Kingfisher Lake multiple times in the hours and days preceding her death. The inquest will examine the circumstances surrounding what happened, with the jury expected to make recommendations to prevent similar deaths. The inquest is expected to last 14 days, with the jury hearing from around 20 witnesses. 2 women's hockey leagues in Canora may be forced to fold after the city published its new ice allocation policy. Reps from both the competitive and recreational leagues presented a deputation to Canora Council recently about the negative impact their new 10 to 11 p.m. time slot will have. Nev Van Pelt has the details.
The Canora Council chambers were packed in mid-July as many members of the hockey community came out to support the deputation for changing the ice allocation policy. The new schedule follows a city policy published in June, which affects both the competitive and recreational women's leagues.
After 35 years of advocating for fair ice time, including meetings with administration and several deputations to council, finally we've secured 2 hours per week for all the women hockey players in Canora. So we had 9 to 10 p.m. and 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. on weeknights, which we deemed a good start. Now we wonder what happened to that good start.
Hager says the new policy is a step in the wrong direction for women's hockey in Canora. Representatives from both women's leagues have stated that an overwhelming majority of players can't play at 10 p.m. or on weekends, which would result in the leagues having to fold.
Women hockey players are healthcare providers, educators, social service workers, business owners, professionals in many designations, and much more. Many of us have lived here or in our First Nations communities all our lives. Some of us left other opportunities but came back to call Canora home. We are the people you want to live, work, play, and invest in your community.
Hager says they've never asked for anything earlier than 9 p.m. as they understand youth take priority, but they're looking for something that allows them to play while also balancing family life. The new policy gives the Canora Islanders junior team priority when it comes to scheduling, and after years of being told there was no extra ice time in the city of Canora, women's hockey advocates are very frustrated about the negative impacts this has on their leagues.
If the report claims this policy aligns with community values, the recreation manager should provide the facts to support that. Where are the facts to demonstrate that citizens value elite athletes over the other recreational users in our community? Where are the facts to show that citizens value a new adult male junior team of mostly non-residents over local women hockey players and other adult recreational users?
The meeting closed with Councillor Lindsay Koch giving notice of her intention to bring a motion to September's council meeting to review the ice allocation policy. Nev Van Pelt, TBT News.
Anishinaabe Nation held their annual women's gathering in Thunder Bay this past week at the Nor'Wester Hotel. The event wrapped up Thursday afternoon following 3 days of sharing, learning, and mutual support.
Through these kind of workshops, through these kind of gatherings, this is where, we will kind of we'll rise up as women to help each other.
Brenda Fox represents the Western Territories on the NAN Women's Council. She's happy with the turnout this week, with more than 70 women attending from remote communities, urban areas, and everywhere in between. She says the gathering is an important opportunity to come together to support each other, share resources, create networks, and pass on cultural teachings.
It's about understanding what being a woman is in our role and our sacred roles. And one of the things is a lot is mental health and well-being and balancing ourselves out to support each other, to create support systems and networks and to share ideas with each other, what works and what will not work.
Fox hopes to uplift women, especially younger ladies, and encourage them to follow their dreams and seek out the support of other women through gatherings like this one. Millions of Canadians received one of their federal carbon rebates this month. It's meant to offset the cost of the federal carbon price. Thunder Bay Superior North MP Patty Haidu says this payment will now benefit small businesses as well.
So the new rebate for small businesses will return $2.5 billion in proceeds to about 600,000 small businesses across the country. This is actually, I think, a really exciting thing for small businesses because they're going to get a decent chunk of change that they'll be able to use for whatever purposes that they need for their small business. And it's certainly something that small businesses have been contributing to and are eligible for.
The carbon rebate is distributed every 3 months. The average family of 4 in Ontario received $280 from the July payment. The Trudeau government has received a lot of pushback from the carbon tax program, with many, including the Conservative Party, arguing the rebates don't make up for the carbon pricing affecting Canadians. Haidu recognizes not everyone benefits financially from the rebate.
Well, generally, 8 out of 10 Canadians will get more back than they've actually paid in the price on pollution. In fact, in rural and smaller communities, those residents will see an increase in the supplement that they get to reflect the fact that they're living often further away from some essential services. So in my riding, people that are living in Marathon or in Long Lac.
The next carbon rebate rolls out in October. Dogs and cats in Lac Seul got a long-awaited visit from a veterinarian this week. We'll have that story coming up right after this short break.
Certainly an example of what we can accomplish together towards making those communities safe.
Lac Seul First Nation recently hosted a mobile spay and neuter clinic during a community animal wellness event. The clinic was a partnership with the Ontario SPCA, as well as a number of area businesses and volunteers. Jaden Billick has more.
The Ontario SPCA, Humane Society, and Lac Seul First Nation worked together to spay and neuter over 100 animals during this 3-day clinic in the community of Frenchman's Head. Officials estimate around 3,000 unplanned puppies and kittens were prevented, who otherwise wouldn't be born in a proper home. The MASH-style event included animal wellness appointments, and over 150 vaccines were administered. Vice President of Community Outreach Services, Jennifer Bloom, speaks more.
Overall, we had a team of 10 veterinary staff, including 3 veterinarians, and we had the supporting our VTs, veterinary technicians, and veterinary assistants as well. We also had a number of our community outreach staff. So we had 2 staff members that attended and quite a few community members that volunteered.
Multiple pet networks and shelters collaborate in order to bring these mobile animal sterilization hospitals to communities which otherwise have limited access to veterinary assistance. This is just one of many yearly animal well-being operations that can't happen without sponsorship from community members.
So this event is certainly an example of what we can accomplish together towards making those communities safe and improving the welfare of animals in those communities as they sit. This is one of 12 MASH style clinics that we're holding this year.
Bloom recognized those involved who travel far distances in order to support these programs, and thanks businesses in the Northwest who are supporting their clinics. Jaden Billick, TBT News.
The Ontario Provincial Police recently held their 2023 Accolade Award ceremony at their general headquarters in Orillia. Several of those awards went to staff from here in the Northwest region. The awards are meant to recognize the exemplary work within the OPP province-wide. 8 awards went to teams or individual officers from our region, including Dryden OPP Sergeant Brittany Bembenek. She took home the Jim Potts Award for Community Service. Bembenek says she's grateful to community partners like the Dryden Friendship Center for working alongside her.
I've been so fortunate in the last couple of years to be able to kind of see the progress that we've made in our community, and just be a small part of that. And a big piece of that for me is ensuring that detachment members have been involved, but also encouraging my family, my husband, and my younger children to be involved in the community as well, as I hope that they grow up seeing the importance and the difference they can make in a community in a proactive way.
Bembenek is currently the OPP Community Engagement Officer in Dryden, but will soon be taking on a bigger role as the Northwest Region's Community Mobilization and Engagement Officer with the Crime Prevention and Community Safety Unit. That's all for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. We'll be back next week with more of the top stories from across the region.